all you want to do with a lot of the stuff, it's the same with him dragging you around. We haven't done leash pressure stuff, so I can't really start making polite leash walking. But don't let him drag you somewhere. Every time he wants something, I see you go like this and then you give and let him go, right? And so when he goes for something and wants it, I'm going to stop him, and then once he stops, I'm taking the tension off. Yeah. Okay, again you can go. Right? And at that point, as soon as he stops trying to go forward, I take the tension off the leash. Yeah. But don't let him pull you over there either, right? He wants to go that way, and I stop him, tension off, stop him, tension off, stop him. So I stop him, and there, good boy, right? Yeah, and that comes off.
For some reason, whenever I go that way, he's okay, and I can do that. But if I come back this way, it's like he knows there's food in here.
Yep.
Even if I pull
so you should put him on his harness, right? So the whole idea, though, is like if he sees something and really wants to go there, don't do this. Like stop him, and then the leash is loose. So he decides to peel off to see people. Stop him, loose leash. Come on, buddy, we're going this way. But if you don't want to pay attention to that, put him on the harness. Don't let him pull you on the slip lead. Right. It's going to make the leash pressure stuff next week harder, right? Okay. So when we teach him to yield to the leash, he's going to fight that more if you've done this stuff, right? So good boy, huh? Yes, right? And so just lots of those. And all you're going to do is just sort of calmly insist. You don't need to escalate. It didn't have to be anything really harsh. You're just basically going to say, like, this is what we're doing right now. I'm holding this. I'm holding your cheeks. Yes, right? Whatever it is. He's like, and then he'll squirm, and when he stops squirming, as soon as he stops, mark it, take your hands off, and then get the reward, right? So that's the beauty of the reward, too. The reward can come afterwards. It's the release there that matters. And so I have the reward in my back pocket, and so it's taking me a second to get it out, right, when I do that. But here he is. I hold him. Yes. And I step away. He knows it's coming, and there it is, right? And then once he's really good at this, we take a foot. Yes. Yay. And he gets a foot. Do both feet. Do his tail. Like, once you get good, you can hold his muzzle like this, and you can put, yes, yay, right? And you can look in his teeth mouth, you can look in his ears, all those kinds of things, right? So basic handling 101. The younger the dog is, the more I can shape some of this stuff if I want to. So depending on the dog, I want them to resist me a little bit. Like, I don't want a complete meltdown, but I like it if the dog says, I don't really want to. And I go, yeah, sorry. Yeah, but a little bit, not a meltdown. And so I can shape these things too. So if I have a dog that's really bothered by it, I can just touch him like this and then mark and reward. And then hook a finger in his collar and mark and reward. And then grab the collar. I can put my hand under his chin. Yes. And just by touching his nose and marking, touching, then touching and holding, then you can shape it too a little bit, just with rewards. And so the more stressed the dog is, the smaller the increments I'll make. And I'll do some little very small step on that path and then release the dog into reward and go from there. This has nothing to do with submission. It has to do with him stopping fighting against the opposition. So I grab his collar, and his natural tendency is to want to move. He wants to buck around. I say, nope. He sits still. Yes. As soon as he's still, I release him and do it. But it doesn't really have anything to do with him submitting, right? It has to do with the fact that he's trying to struggle to get it loose, and as soon as he stops struggling, that's what gets him loose. The breaking of resistance, right? And so dogs naturally resist when we do these things. So come here. So I get his collar, and I should be able to grab his collar like this.
Just grab it on the top, kind of.
Yeah, so usually I'll do it from in front, like right here, and that makes him want to pull backwards. And then I hold him like this. Nope. Nope. Yes! Nice. Good boy, huh? And then once he's good at this, every time I go like this, he's going to sit still like that. Yes, right? And then I can do that. And so every time you lay your hand on his collar from in front, he's going to sit still. He's there, and I go, yes, right? And then I can grab his collar, and I can grab his foot. Oh, no, hey, leave my finger alone. Yes, right? He sits still. And so all these things, you want to like manage this stuff too. So my whole routine in the beginning is like, so you've had the dog for 10 days, right? So not very long. That's not a long time to build a relationship, get everything going. And so when I talk about management with a lot of the dogs, it'd be the same with the getting, is there's a relationship building. You're going to channel them into the work and stuff. So a lot of times I avoid these fights with the dog until then, right? So the dog just doesn't, if I know my dog's going to be obnoxious in a certain circumstance, I just keep him out of that circumstance, right? With those things. I don't want to have big fights with you early in our relationship. But once you get in there a bit, you're like, okay, we've got this, right? And so that makes the dog hard to live with for a couple of weeks because you're not really forcing them to do things while you get to know each other. But once the dog's comfortable with you and knows, then these are some of the little things. The crate drill, like going in and coming out of the crate and waiting to come out of the crate, is really easy. You just plunk down and you close the crate door. Right before you open it, you say wait, or whatever. They don't know what that means, but they're about to find out, right? Wait. Then I start to open the crate door and they start to come out and I just close it in their face.
Good boy.
And I say wait, and I start to open the crate door and they start to come out and I close it in their face. And when I open it and they don't try to come out, I say okay, and then I jump away and let them out. And so it's a really easy way to teach a dog to kind of just hold itself for a second in the early stages of your training, right? And so there, instead of pulling on him all the time, I would try to direct him back into me. So don't stand there and go, right? Don't let him drag you around, like if you're walking somewhere, but also if he wants to go that way, go, hey, Jay, go over here. And he turns back towards you and then, come on, buddy, yay, work him back into working with you, right? So instead of pull, 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 don't just sit there and let him do that stuff at this stage. Once we do leash pressure, then we'll teach cues for leaving things on the floor. We'll teach the dog to walk politely, all that kind of stuff, right? But there's a developmental place for that in our work. And if I go at that too early, then I damage other aspects of our training, right? And so it has a negative effect on motivation. It can have a negative effect on our relationship building. It can inhibit the dog for things that I might want them to do as we go forward. And if it's a strict pet dog for somebody, then that doesn't matter that much. So they have an inhibited dog, right? So now that dog won't play fetch, or that dog won't, jump or do other things. But if you want your dog eventually to do things, then we have to keep certain doors open in that process. And so we're much more likely in the early stages of a relationship with a dog to manage these issues instead of fight with the dog over them. But there comes a point, of course, I don't want to wait forever. I don't want to let the dog be obnoxious for 2 years and then say, oh, by the way, now you learn to be polite. That's not fair either, right? You want to do that incrementally. And so one of the easy ones for impulse control is just making the puppy wait to come out of the crate, because there's no real pressure there. It's like, you just can't get out until I say okay. And so that's a great thing to do relatively early with your puppies, about waiting and those sorts of things. The same with going into the crate. Like with my puppies, I throw food in. So they come up to the thing, I say, go to bed, and I throw a piece of food in, they run in. And then I go to bed, throw a piece of food in, they get in there, or whatever you want to say, and do that. And then I put food in there and bring them up, and I say, go to bed, and they haven't seen the food, and I just don't let them go anywhere but forward. I'm right behind them, push their butt, like stuff, they dive in, they're like, oh, look at that, it's magically, right? and if you have a slip lead, sometimes if the dog will really fight, like he would really push back, I just basically stop him, he can't back up. And I go forward, go forward, go forward, go forward, and he dives in, and yay! And then lots of times I'll have food in this hand, so as soon as he dives in, I throw a whole handful in after him, right? So what you do is you get up to there, and he doesn't think there's anything in there, and he doesn't want to go in, and you say, you got to go in, go to bed, and you block him from doing anything else, and he dives in, and then you chuck a whole handful of food in behind him, and he's like, oh, if I jump in, the reward will come in after me, and that way you kind of break through a little bit of that resistance in those things. But for him, the handling drills will be the same: collar, feet, muzzle, those kinds of things.
Good boy,
if the dog resists, just to kind of calm, knock it off. Don't clamp down, but just don't give up. And then when the dog stops moving, yes, let go, get your reward out, and go that way, right? Really, we'll revisit, obviously, the week after next, we start our management class. And so in there, we'll go through a lot of this stuff. We'll go through crate games. We'll go through introducing our dogs to X-bends, Coranda beds, like all those kinds of things that are a part of management-related stuff, right? And so we'll get into that in some detail. But in the interim, I would just play a lot of that where you sit in front of the crate and throw food in, tell them to go in, throw food in, tell them to go in, throw food in, tell them to go in, tell them to go in, then throw food in, tell them to go in, then throw food in. Bait the crate as he's coming out, So when he's coming out, I throw a piece in behind him, bring him back up, tell him to go to bed, give him a little poke. He dives in, yay. Let him back out again. Back in, back out again, back in, back out again. And then some weights on those things. And each of those. And then once you've got the weight there, that's a perfect place to put the leash on. So once I've got that and he doesn't have a leash on, I put him in there and I say, wait, and I start to open the door. If he tries to come out, I close it on him. And when I can say, wait, and he'll stay there, he waits, and I loop the leash over him. And then I say, okay. And so he has to wait in there while I slip the leash over his head before he gets to pop out.
Yeah, I've gotten pretty good at aiming. So when you
You can, with the slip leads, you can make your lasso a little big and let him run through it, right? And they're like, I gotcha. Right? But once you start to wait, that's a perfect thing. That's what I do in that spot. I make you wait, and then I loop the leash over you, and then I release you out of the crate, right? So this concept of breaking through subtle amounts of resistance, it's going to come up throughout the class, right? And there are places in life where the dog's going to offer you opportunities for this, and there are places where we can deliberately set it up to happen. I prefer the ones that we set up to happen. You're more likely to handle those well. If you wait for your dog to resist you in some random session in life, then maybe that goes well, maybe that doesn't go well, right? So the places, there are certain behaviors in here over the course of the whole program that we could shape without any pressure with just rewards. So most of this handling stuff, a lot of clicker trainers or reward-based trainers shape these things very incrementally. Just touch the dog's foot, give a reward. Touch the dog's foot, click reward. Touch the toenail. They do it in little tiny steps like that. And they don't cause the dog any stress. The dog figures out to do those things, and the dog will sit there. And it can work really nicely. The problem is, at some point, you're going to have to work through your dog resisting you. There's going to be something your dog doesn't want to do. And they know what they're supposed to do, and they're not in the mood. They don't feel like it, and they're going to fight back against you doing it. And so I don't want that just to happen when it happens. So I set up small amounts of resistance around a couple of exercises. And these handling drills are one of them. There's carryover from that to when I start to teach my formal retrieve, and I want the dog to hold the retrieve item. Because what we do is we teach that with a piece of PVC. Hold. So you'll see when we get to advanced obedience and we teach the dog the hold on the item, we do it with a piece of PVC. And I place the PVC in the dog's mouth and I make him hold on to it like that. Yes. And so what happens is if my dog doesn't accept me holding their muzzle, then they fight like gangbusters, and then I'm trying to get the PVC in their mouth and they're squirming all over. So I've already broken through their resistance with these handling drills first. And that's a perfect spot. Leash pressure is the other. We're going to teach the dog to yield to the leash, but we're going to do it in a way that I prompt the dog deliberately to resist me a little bit. I could shape that. I could shape leash pressure. I could take a leash and rewards and tug a little bit, yes, reward. Tug a little bit, yes, reward. And get the dog to move in little tiny steps of successive approximation. And I could teach my dog, if my dog likes rewards, to move around with the leash. But that doesn't mean that they're going to move with the leash when they don't want to, or that they're going to respond to it when there's something else they want out there. I have to get them to do it even when they want to go the other direction.